Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Monday, March the 13th. And welcome to our commentary. Welcome to our weekly chat with our friend George Rodriguez from South Texas. There's George right there. He's got a backup figure. I mean, he's got a backup picture behind him. Just in case he disappears, we know who we're talking to. George, of course, that's your Saturday show on The Answer down in San Antonio. So I guess that must be going pretty well for you.
It's doing pretty well. Thank you.
Thank you. That's right. That's right. And that's a local broadcast, right? It's only local in San Antonio, right?
Actually, in January, the network picked it up, and it's on Saturdays at 1 o'clock Eastern time in New York and in DC.
Oh, great. Well, congratulations on that. I didn't know that. Congratulations. Well, I wanted to get started today with a quick look at the past very quickly here. Charles Krauthammer, the wonderful political columnist, author, a psychiatrist actually by training and education. He was born on this day in 1950, passed away in 2018. I always thought he was great. I mean, one of the reasons I got hooked on the Fox Report at 5 o'clock was to sit around and wait for his commentary at the end of the show. So I miss him a lot. He was just a great guy, George.
He really was. I was very, very lucky to meet him when I first went to Washington in 1975 as an intern. He was doing graduate work in political science. He was already a PhD or a doctor in psychiatry at George Washington University, and he was getting involved in politics. And he used to say that there's no one more qualified to analyze politicians than a psychiatrist.
He's got a point. He's got a
I think
point. He's
so.
got a point. Yeah, I heard him say that a couple of times. He's got a point. He's got a point about that. So the late Charles Krauthammer, born on this day, I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe he was born in Montreal and then came to the United States to study and stayed here. That's what I think. I'm not 100% sure
I
about that,
can't.
but I
I
think he
cannot
was.
remember that. I can't remember that.
Yeah. But I know he graduated from psychiatrist school in New York,
Yeah.
and that's where he had that terrible accident, I
Yes.
think, that left him paralyzed for the rest of his life. So Charles Krauthammer, one of our real heroes, was born on this day in 1950. I mean, we lost him really young.
Yeah.
He was
He was.
68 years old. I mean, what a terrible tragedy that was. Well, George, we got a lot to get into today. The border disputes with Mexico are on the table here. But let me begin. Let me begin with the legislative session. They're talking about school choice. That seems to be. I think that's going to happen. But the question now is whether we get vouchers or savings accounts or a compromise of the two. So tell me, what are you hearing about school choice and the session in Austin?
Well, the savings account seems to be the bargaining tool for the left, for the liberals. There is a front page article in today's San Antonio Express talking about that, and anything that the San Antonio Express pushes is going to be the liberal point of view. They are a New York Times newspaper affiliate, so they're going to be pushing that a whole lot more than anything else. Now, whether it makes sense or not, I have a question about that. The other thing is that whether or not the politicians in Austin are going to have the backbone to stand up for vouchers versus savings accounts or any type of a mediation position. I am not that sure. I think probably we will end up with a compromise, which will be the savings accounts. I am not exactly sure how they're going to work. I frankly have my own doubts about it. I feel that a person who's paying taxes into any system should have the ability to choose how their money for education is going to be used, and that's strictly not the case if you're going to continue paying for an education system that I feel is, has completely failed, particularly in the urban
Right.
communities.
Right. That's correct. Now, I favor vouchers because I think that's an easier
That's it.
system to
Clean and
understand. But
simple.
yeah, it's very simple to understand. I mean, you get a voucher and you use it. I think that the issue from what I'm getting up here in the media is that some of the rural areas are don't want to give up on their public schools, I guess, because they like their schools and they fear that school choice could take some of the value of their schools away. I don't think so, but that's what they fear. So my preference would be vouchers. I understand how the savings accounts work because they've tried that in other states. Basically, you build up a little account that you can use for school. But I think the voucher, as you say, the voucher is the simplest way. So we'll see how it goes. The governor seems to be totally committed to school choice. That is,
Yeah.
So he's got to walk away with something.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. I mean,
the governor has to walk away with
it's going to be
something.
tough for him because he's got to show a victory of some type.
Yes, so he's got to walk away with some victory because he's so committed to the whole issue. Well, let's talk a little bit about the border. The border has really been in the news here lately. I should add a note here that the Texas and the United States, the federal government and our local government have issued travel advisories to Mexico during spring break, which is, of course, this week for most people. And these travel advisories are related to some of the problems going on in Mexico. In the past, George, whenever Texas or the federal government has issued these travel advisories, seems like they're going in one ear and out the other because
Yeah.
thousands of people still go. But I think the fact that these warnings are coming out,
I
and
have
saw a map.
I have relatives
Yeah.
that were down there this past week.
Yeah.
And
I've got a post over at the American Thinkerchat, and I've got the map of Mexico that has been,
yep.
Checked as, I
They
mean,
said,
it's a
well,
big
Cancun is
chunk
very
of the
safe.
map.
Very safe. Well, I have to just ask myself, well, what is the definition of safe?
That's right. Yeah, I mean, look, if you say to me that things are unsafe, I'm more than likely not going to go.
Yeah, right.
But because it's not like the only beaches in the world are there. I mean, there are other places, including some here in the United States. I mean, Florida, Hawaii, as alternatives. But there has always been. You having grown up in Texas, George, you probably know this better than I do. But there has always been something about spring break in Mexico for Texas kids or Texas college kids. I don't know what it is, but it just seems like Mexico attracts people for spring break.
It's easy drugs and no limit for drinking age. Those are the two
That's
biggest.
it. And I suppose quick roads from Texas, you can get
right.
down easily. So we wish everybody well during spring break, but do pay attention to the travel advisories. Okay, let's look at the two big issues this week. Let's begin with this rush to the border. 1,000 people apparently tried to get to the border. Tell us what happened when they got to the border, George. Were they able to cross or were they stopped? And by the way, I believe, as you mentioned to me in an article, that most of them were Venezuelans, right? Who had tried to do this. So fill me in. What happened when they got to the border, George?
Well, because of a recent Biden effort to look tough at the border, there have been stronger measures put in place, not allowing people to just cross helter skelter like they were letting them. Consequently, there has been a great backup of people at the ports of entry in Nuevo Laredo and Juarez, down in Matamoros. There's been a great number of people that are backing up. The numbers are growing, and as well as their frustration is also growing. Now, in this case, apparently somebody started, which is always the problem. Somebody started a rumor that they were going to let them in for a few moments on Sunday, let a certain number in, and there was a huge rush of about 1,000 people from one side of the border to the other side, because the Biden administration has apparently gotten a little bit tougher. That's, I'll explain a little bit more about that, but has gotten a little bit more difficult for letting people across. The Mexican government has also gotten tougher as well, particularly after the shooting of Americans down in Matamoros the other day. They've stepped themselves up as far as trying to look tough. The combination of Mexican immigration officers and Mexican police and the Border Patrol, as well as El Paso police, were successful in stopping the rush across the bridge. Now, the part that isn't being told by the media is that immediately afterwards, people were lined up, and slowly, little by little, some people were let into the United States, were paroled, as they call it, into the United States, which means that they were given a date to show up and review their asylum claim and released into the United States. No one, of course, expects these people to ever show up. So how many of them were released, or if all of them are being released at this point to relieve the pressure? I would say that probably by the end of the week, all 1,000 are going to get in anyway. Mm-hmm. That is the real tragedy of this whole border situation with the Biden administration. The other thing that we've got with that with El Paso is that the Biden administration, because they are playing politics, and that's the only reason that they're doing it, is slowing things down a bit to prepare to appear to be tough on the border, just as they have, just as the Biden or Biden himself vetoed a bill that was proposing to allow more people to more criminals to go free in D.C. It was an effort in effect to allow the police, or to back the police down. Biden vetoed it. The same thing is happening here with this on the border. On the border, there are some measures that have been put in place lately to slow people down from crossing and declaring asylum, and at the same time being paroled into the United States. Never mind that they are doing it at a slower pace, but it's still happening.
Right. Now, there is some talk, and I maybe you've heard this, there is some talk that what is happening, whether it's on the border or this oil project, this energy project up in Alaska.
That's another one.
It looks like the Biden administration is trying to shift a little bit to the right.
Yes.
As they plan to go on re-election. But
yes.
But again, I think this is confusing. It's politics, but when people have to rely on rumors to come into your country, what that tells me is that there's a failure in your immigration policy. Yeah. I mean, the immigration policy should always be very clear.
Exactly.
I mean, there's no reason to have rumors. It should be very, very clear. This is the policy. This is how you get in, and that's it. And obviously, many of these Venezuelans,
Mexico would not be suffering. Mexico would not be suffering if we didn't have this green light to let people in constantly. There would be fewer people in Mexico, and Mexico wouldn't be suffering. However, Mexico's an accomplice with it because the cartels are helping the situation.
And when we're going to touch on that in a second, because that's that you're exactly right about that. But it just seems to me that when people come to your country, the rules to come into the country should be very clear. They were with my family when we came here, and they were with any other immigrant who's come here to the United States legally. They certainly are with the millions who are waiting to enter the country legally on a list right now. So the fact that a rumor could create this kind of reaction only confirms that we're not communicating very clearly what our policy is. Let me also add something, and please confirm this or deny this. I've heard this, so please tell me if I'm right. That some of these people who are trying to get into the United States are Venezuelans who've actually come from as far away as Chile
Yes.
and Colombia. In other words, these are not people who came from
Not coming directly
Venezuela.
from Venezuela. Right.
Yeah, they didn't come directly from Venezuela to El Paso. Many of them were living in Chile and in Colombia
That's
and got the
true.
word to come up. And that, of course, must be very frustrating for them because they gave up whatever they had in their country and then whatever they had in Chile and whatever they had in Colombia.
That's
Now
right.
let's talk about the other big topic, and of course those two dead people in Matamoros. You mentioned that there's three young women who are missing. That's an unrelated case, but still
Mm-hmm.
going on. For those in the audience who may not be familiar with what we're talking about, let me just do a quick replay of what happened. These people got to the border, four of them. They had an encounter with cartels. Two are dead. I believe one was injured. After this happened, the senator from South Carolina, Lindsey Graham, he's the senator of the state that these four people are from. He made a public statement about getting tougher with the cartels by naming them terrorist organizations, therefore giving the president a bunch of options that he doesn't have at the moment. That prompted a response by the president of Mexico, where he basically said, well, nobody's going to come in Mexico and tell us how to do things. And then he made a very stupid remark by talking about the Republican Party and we're going to target the Republican Party. I thought that was completely stupid, but he said it. So that's kind of where we are right now. Now, again, we go back to the failure of the Biden administration, George, because when President Trump sat down with Lopez Obrador, he was able to negotiate with him quite a bit. And he was able to get the remain in Mexico. He was able to get the Mexican government to do more. And the way he did it was actually to threaten to use to do this terrorist option, but he did it in private. He didn't do it in public. And I think my only criticism of Senator Graham is that if you're publicly going to say we're going to use the armed forces against Mexico, you got to expect the Mexican president to react like he did. I mean, not defending him, but I think any other president would have reacted the same way, George.
Yeah, of course. And again, this is politics being played for political reasons, being played for the public. It's not politics being played for public safety, for the needs of the nation. I mean, again, the situation with Lindsey Graham reacting to the shooting and kidnapping of his state's residents. One of the things that Lindsey Graham should have done is taken a deep breath and recognized that there are some deep questions about what these people were doing in the first place down in Mexico. We know for a fact that there is a big, a very, very active, well-organized pipeline between Matamoros and Atlanta, the Eastern Seaboard, for the distribution of drugs, fentanyl, and a few other things. And it appears from some people's analysis that one of these gentlemen that was shot was trying to circumvent that pipeline, trying to remove the middleman. And, I mean, the people that were involved in the shooting were low-level criminals, were low-level cartels. That's the other thing that needs to be understood, is that the cartels, there may be the huge big bosses, like Chapo, the Chapitos, the Chapo Guzman's kids, who are now running the Sinaloa cartel, and others that are running the Gulf cartel. But then there's lots of small lieutenants, lots of junior gang members who make their living off of supporting and helping the big cartel. And they don't like to get stepped on. They are the ones that are always shooting at each other, killing each other off. Matamoros had just had a big shootout about 2 weeks ago on a weekend, they had a big shootout between two small factions. So you're not dealing with small time criminals when you're dealing with the cartel folks, where anybody in Mexico. You're dealing with international folks
Right.
who are well organized, well armed, and well prepared.
Right. And that's, that is why, using the terrorist or designating them as terrorists may make a lot of sense because you are dealing with international
Yeah.
organizations. But my only criticism, and it's a small one, of Senator Graham is I understand how you feel, but saying it publicly
Saying it
probably was
publicly,
not.
that wasn't good.
No, because you expect the Mexican government to react
Exactly.
the way they did. But as President Trump demonstrated, you can
You can
negotiate
do
with
it.
Lopez Obrador.
You can do
If
it
you sit down
quietly.
with him and you say, "Look, this is what we're going to do. They're going to remain in Mexico, and you're going to help me." He did. He actually cooperated quite a bit with President Trump.
I
And
guarantee that the Mexican president respects. I won't use fears, but respects the American military a whole lot more than the cartels.
well, sure, and I think he also, and this is, I wrote a post over at the American Thinker where I pointed out that both countries have a problem here. We have a consumption problem, and that cannot be denied. We're the ones putting the money on the table. And Mexico has a cartel problem
Correct.
because these cartels are becoming more and more powerful. They have better and better weapons. And talk to anybody familiar with the Mexican military, they are really taking a toll on the Mexican military. I mean, this battle with the cartels, this, George, but maybe some of our friends listening may not know. Back in 2007, when President Calderon took over, he went after the cartels with very tough policy. He threw the army at them. And here we are 15 years later. And, they've made some progress, but they're going and they're still going. So it's a tough battle. It's a very tough battle for Mexico. And I think privately, Mexico would probably agree to the terrorist designations, but I wouldn't make it public.
Yeah, right.
What do you expect the president of Mexico to do?
If any country has an inferiority complex to the United States, it's Mexico, and you cannot rub it in their face. You just can't do it.
No, you can't. And so I think that, again, when these things happen, there's always things that could be said differently or better. I criticized President Lopez Obrador for talking about targeting Republicans in the next election.
Now that was another one.
That was stupid. But I also think Senator Graham should have been maybe more discreet.
Diplomatic.
Yeah, and saying, because anytime you mention using armed forces, Mexicans get a little excited because of their history.
They see Pershing.
Yeah, exactly.
They
so they get excited. Exactly. They get excited about that. And I think that with good reason, but hopefully both sides can sit down quietly. But again, I give a lot of credit here to President Trump because he was able to do it as president. And unfortunately, I think that my biggest regret, George, about all of this is that President Lopez Obrador should publicly criticize the U.S. policy on the border, because the Biden policy on the border has made Mexico more dangerous, has made Mexico more vulnerable, and has turned Mexico into something Mexico never wanted to be, which is an avenue to the United States.
Obrador will not criticize the immigration policy because he fears the cartels and because he fears a backlash of his own folks who want to cross whenever they want to cross.
Right. But it was a different problem, George. You know this better than me, being closer to the border. But it was a different problem for years. And what I mean by that is that for years, the problem was Mexicans coming over and sending money back to Mexico. So from the Mexican standpoint, that was not a bad deal.
Yep,
they come over here, they work, and they send money back. And, some of the work they did was work up here. So now the big problem for Mexico is that it's Venezuelans who are crossing, that it's people from other countries. So Mexico has become this destination to
Correct.
get to the United States and all the problems that that brings, George.
Pathway. They're just a pathway.
That's it. They're a pathway, and there's nothing in it for them. What's in it for them? I mean, there may be
The only people
trafficking.
that are profiting from it are the cartels, and
Well,
that's it.
that's it.
And it's
But
not
there's
filtering down to the rest.
exactly, it's not helping the Mexican government. It's not like, again, I go back to
In
what I,
fact, Silvio, one of the interesting things is that during the Trump administration, when the Trump folks got tough on the border, on the crossings, and people started to back up. If you recall, the mayors of Tijuana, the mayors of Juarez, the mayors of Nuevo Laredo were complaining very vocally and openly, telling the Mexican government to stop people from coming into Mexico because they were stopping there.
right.
That has
E-
now stopped. That has
Exactly.
they are not opening their mouths anymore, and that is a direct relationship to the cartels who told them to shut up because they're making money off of these people coming through.
Well, that's right. And I think, as I said before, that before it was Mexicans coming and sending money back to their mother. That was not a bad deal for Mexico. Now you've got, it seems like anybody but Mexicans. I mean, they're coming from different countries, and these people are simply crossing through Mexico. So what's in it for Mexico other than, like you say, turning into a pathway? Well, we're going to keep an eye on all of this because this is not going to get any better in the short term. But clearly, what we're seeing, and I'll summarize it by saying this: I think what we're seeing is the consequence of not having a policy.
That's right.
When you
That's
don't
exactly
enforce
right.
the laws you have, this is what you get.
You get
get a lot
chaos.
you get chaos, and that is what we have right now at the border. And I'm
Right.
not sure how to stop it now because
Well,
there's a
changing
lot of people on the
administration would be
way.
a good start.
Well, sure, but I mean that's going to require a presidential action of some kind. Actually, all he has to do is enforce the laws that we already have.
No kidding. That's right.
I mean, he doesn't have to write a new one or send it to Congress or anything like that. Well, George, we sure got a lot of stuff done here in a short time. Talk about a
Time
lot of,
flies when you're having fun.
yes, that's right. So, anything else you want to add? I know we mentioned these three young women who are still missing. Anything else that you wanted to add here? Because we went through a lot, and I want to make sure we covered everything.
No, I think we covered a lot of stuff. I think that people really do need to need to be very, very careful in going across the border. It's a dangerous situation right now, and it's going to get more dangerous if we don't stop. If we don't do something about our border policy and immigration policies, and even places like Cancun, who they claim is very safe. Places like Acapulco. I remember Acapulco.
Mm-hmm.
There was a mecca for Hollywood. There was a famous movie that Cantinflas made in Acapulco. But Acapulco now is where two of the biggest cartels clash on a regular basis.
Right,
And,
the state of Guerrero.
state of Guerrero is very
Acapulco is in the state of Guerrero, and you're exactly right. There's a lot of problems there, and then of course Sinaloa, which is Culiacan, which is next to it. But what I find interesting in talking to people who have been to Mexico is that it seems the problems are the more dangerous places are the outlying areas.
Correct.
You get to Mexico City and you don't have this problem. You get to Monterrey, not as much, but it's the outlying areas, and that's where particularly people driving.
Yeah.
Driving
from Nuevo Laredo to Monterrey. I think you are taking your life in your hands.
Yeah, you are, especially if you're driving a big truck.
Correct.
Okay, because you're going to get stopped and they're going to take it from you. These big trucks that people like to drive. Well, George, are you enjoying your spring break? Are you getting ready to?
Actually, I'm very, very upset because last week, the temperature was in the 80s. It was sunny. It was beautiful. Today, it's in the 60s. It's cool. And we can't go and sit by the pool or anything of the nature.
Yes, it felt more like summer last week here too. And now it's starting to cool off as well here. So we may just have a little, a little bit of
Climate
winter.
change. We need to
Yeah,
send money.
climate change.
We need
That's
to
got to
send
be
money
it.
to Senator Warren.
Yeah, that's right. We need to do something. But yes, the temperatures are a little bit cooler as well here in North Texas. But here's the good news, George. Let's leave our conversation with something really positive.
Yes.
The baseball season is 2 weeks away.
Ah, yes.
There's the best. I mean, that's the good news. The baseball season is 2 weeks away, so that means that we've got a box score to look at every day. That is fun. Now, for baseball fans like me, that's a lot of fun. So we'll we'll see how that is. Have a great day, George. As always,
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your participation. Enjoy yourself, and we look forward to the next time. It's always a lot of fun for me to do it.
You got it, buddy. Have a good one. Call me anytime you want.
Thank you so much. Our good friend George Rodriguez, as you could see from that little thing behind him, he has the radio show down in San Antonio, and I just learned from him today that it has been syndicated to other markets. So that's a great thing. I'm very proud of our friend George. But the problem on the border is a huge problem, and it's really a direct consequence of not having a policy. That's what it is. When you don't have a policy, when you have an administration that for whatever reason doesn't want to enforce your immigration laws, you have to have, look, I came to this country when I was 12 years old, when I was a kid with my parents. And you have to have immigration laws. You have to be able to say, these are the rules. They apply to everybody who wants to come. And if you want to come, hey, we love to have you, but these are the rules you have to follow. That's the way it has to be. If you don't have that system, then this is what you're going to get. This chaotic situation that we're seeing on the border that is not helping anybody, and especially not helping Mexico. Okay, this is really hurting Mexico. Mexico is really, in many ways, the country most impacted by all of this. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.